My name is Justin Howe, and this is my Module 16 review of the Missing Booster Club Fund case. What we have here, the brief case summary, is an issue or an incident where an administrator believes funds may have been stolen from after a basketball game by an individual that had approached him earlier seeking funds from a PTA account. So what do we know so far? What do we know, the facts in the case? Principal Stevens is the only administrator in his middle school of approximately 450 students. His school is undergoing a changing demographic, meaning it's becoming more blue-collar, is one way to put it. He relies a great deal on volunteers to manage incidents or manage events such as the basketball game portrayed in the case study. Miss Bowman, she is a member of the PTA. She's a consistent volunteer, and her daughter is a cheerleading standout. And she was invited, the daughter, to travel to New York City for a cheer event that would cost approximately $100. Miss Bowman approached Mr. Stevens seeking funds to pay for this, seeking PTA funds, and Mr. Stevens denied her on the basis that those funds are meant to be used for all students, not just an individual student. Mr. Dumas. Mr. Dumas is a parent who attended the basketball game in question and mentioned to Mr. Stevens that he had used a $50 bill to purchase admissions to the event. That'll come into play later. And also a security guard. I just mentioned him here because Mr. Stevens always uses a security guard to travel with him when he makes a deposit after an event like the basketball game, which is good practice. It should be noted. All right. What do we need to know? We need to know whether or not Mr. Dumas really used a $50 bill. Really, almost the entire case for this incident rests on this issue. If he didn't use a $50 bill, then the likelihood something happened here is much less. There were also 10 missing tickets. We need to figure out what happened to those 10 tickets. Miss Bowman claims they were discarded because they were ripped or torn, and so she just tossed them out. If that's true, then she maybe did not steal any funds or take funds, or there aren't any missing funds, not that she was the one that did it. But that can be accounted for. Fund security. Could anyone else have accessed the funds besides Miss Bowman? If so, the potential that those missing funds, if they are indeed missing, could have been taken by someone else. And then finally, the other volunteer. We know from the case scenario that there was a second volunteer in the admissions area of this event. It was not clear as to whether they were sitting together or if there is potentially two gates for the game. If so, that's an issue we might have to address later. The problem is, what we're trying to figure out is, did a theft occur at all? It's possible the $50 bill was not given to the gate. It's also possible that the tickets were just discarded and that's the end of it. Or it's possible the $50 bill disappeared and the missing tickets were just a way to cover for the missing funds, which coincidentally would be worth $50. And we need to figure out who's being truthful here. Is it Mr. Dumas and Ms. Bowman? And get to the bottom of this issue. All right. So a plan of action. As an administrator, my plan of action would involve 5 steps, first of which would be to determine the authenticity of Mr. Dumas' claim. Is it really, this is one of the key factors here in this case, did he truly utilize a $50 bill to get admission, or was he just making that claim for some other purpose? So we need to talk to him and find out if that's truly what he did. Step 2, determine the location of the torn tickets. Were they thrown away? Were they stuck in a drawer somewhere? Can we find those tickets to determine if they really were discarded for the reason Ms. Bowman claimed. Step 3, we're going to interview Ms. Bowman, confirm her story, corroborate her story if possible by talking to witnesses. Again, hopefully there was a second volunteer with her at all times. And then another issue that wasn't addressed in this scenario is surveillance. Do we have video surveillance of the area where she worked? And if that is available, we'll definitely use that. Step 4, determine if anyone else could have accessed the funds. Did Ms. Bowman perhaps ask someone to cover for her for a few minutes while she went to the restroom? Or was her attention taken off the funds, and did someone else perhaps get into the box where the funds were being kept? Again, surveillance here would be very helpful. If we have it, we'll use that. Step 5, review findings. Make determination and take action as warranted. So we'll look at the results of steps 1 through 4, look at the evidence, and then determine where that will take us, and we'll make those actions and determinations at that point. So what strategies overall will I use when taking these steps, when investigating this case? First of all, I'll utilize all means available to gather facts. So that means I'll interview all potential witnesses. I will review all, hopefully, video that we have access to. I will sit down with everyone involved that could give me any kind of evidence at all as to what happened. So I won't rule anything out until I've done that. Strategy 2, I will maintain a non-investigatory or accusatory tone while interviewing those involved. I'm going to go into this with the assumption that everyone is innocent. That this was just a misunderstanding. And there are a lot of reasons for that, but to maintain a civil tone is important and assume innocence. Remember the big picture. This is about determining what happened to the funds and if they are missing, but it's also important to remember that we want to come across in a professional manner. We're representing the district, we're representing the school, and these are parents, these are patrons, so we're going to treat them with respect. Strategy 3, document all steps. I'm going to be meticulous in documenting who I talked to, when I talked to them, what we talked about. And that takes us to part 4, strategy 4, include witnesses. Anytime I sit down with someone, whether it's Mr. Dumas, Ms. Bowman, I'm going to try to have, I will have a witness there with me, a member of, an employee of the district, preferably a supervisor, someone from central office, who can corroborate what happened during that interview or that discussion process. Strategy 5, I will always keep my supervisor apprised of what I'm doing. Who this might be in this particular instance could be the superintendent, maybe there's a deputy superintendent. Whoever that is, I will keep them informed almost on a daily basis, who I talked to, what we talked about, assuming they're not in the meeting with me. Strategy 6, I'm going to refrain from making any accusation unless or until I have evidence that supports such actions. And I will make sure that I have my supervisor with me, if at all possible, and district legal counsel. Basically, don't be reckless in your accusations, and don't make any accusations until you have substantial evidence to back that up. All right. How can I resolve this issue while at the same time promoting success of all students? First of all, demonstrate the core values of fairness, justice, and truth. Okay, so during this process, I will do that by being guided by facts. I'm not going to assume one party is guilty and then do everything I can to support that assumption. No, I'm going to start with a clean slate. I'm going to investigate and go where the facts take me, essentially. Another way of saying that is to be unbiased and treat everyone fairly. This would be a good example to set for the students. Now, an example of that, as it relates particularly to this case, is that although the facts seem to indicate the guilt of Ms. Bowman, the investigation should not be conducted with the purpose of proving her guilt, but instead finding the truth. Okay? So everyone is assumed to be innocent. And that's how an administrator should approach this case. Number 2, protecting the well-being of all students. I'm going to be thorough and I'm going to exhaust all efforts as I try to determine what happened to these funds, if anything. It is as an administrator, one of my primary duties is to protect the welfare of the students, and that includes the financial welfare. And these funds belong to all students in the school. So I will be executing my duties as I work hard to determine what happened to these funds. And as it relates to this case, an example here, the principal should utilize all funds, all tools at their disposal in determining the truth. This is a potential crime perpetrated against all students, and protecting students is a primary charge given to principal. So in doing this, I'll work tirelessly to determine what happened. And then finally, to protect the integrity of the school and district, this goes back to how you treat people, the tone you take, your assumption of innocence, and the way you interact with people and your documentation. You want to represent the school and the district with the highest integrity of all time, at all times. And that means look at the big picture. Okay, treat these individuals you're going to talk to with the utmost respect. They are parents, they're stakeholders in the district, and you want to represent the district as best you can. And that, again, is a great way to promote the success of students and to demonstrate correct behavior for them. All right. The debrief and reflection here. All right. In reflecting, I thought how important it was to avoid jumping to conclusions. All right. It's very important that I go into this case, to solving this problem without any bias, without any assumption of guilt, and with the single purpose of finding out the facts. And to do that, I'm going to be deliberate, and I'm going to be thorough and take my time and document everything. Okay? Next, what was I feeling during this process? Basically, I'd be feeling a sense of duty. As the steward of funds, as the leader of the school, it is my duty to determine what happened here. And this happened on my watch. So I have to, again, work tirelessly to figure out what happened, find a solution, and make the students whole again. What was I valuing as I went through this scenario? The importance of modeling good behavior. Again, you don't want to fly off with an approach where you think you know what happened. For instance, you believe Ms. Bowman is guilty and you're going to do everything you can to prove that. Is the wrong mindset to take. It is, we have a potential issue, let's collect the facts. So we got to value a good and proper process and the value of modeling good behavior. Again, we go back here to the big picture. The $50 is important, but it's not as important as maintaining the goodwill of the community in relationship with the school, so you don't want to make any accusations here. All right, what are some unresolved issues that we still have after this case, after the steps are taken? First off, how to prevent this in the future. What can we do to keep this from happening again? Obviously, in my opinion, I shouldn't say obviously, in my opinion, the important thing would be to add to the administrative personnel on site at these types of events. And I'll talk about some ways to do that here in the next couple of slides. Second, were there multiple gates? And if there were, I think we could really help ourselves by consolidating that into one gate where we can pool all of our human resources, our volunteers together, make sure that no one is ever alone with these funds in order to prevent something like this happening in the future, hopefully. Volunteers taking funds while alone. Again, if volunteers are working gates alone, it opens up that issue, that question of what happened. And this isn't just to protect us, but also to protect these volunteers from being accused of things in the future.